Hello, my name is Dalia.
My name is Sam.
My name is Jocelyn.
My name is Leo.
And today we'll be talking about nonverbal communication in the business world between the cultures. We'll cover the areas of Australia, Germany, Asia, and Mexico, and the differences that they have within their cultures, also comparing to the United States. What is nonverbal communication? Nonverbal communication is communication that occurs without words, which is kind of continuous. It is the body language and environment content involved in any communication. It is not what is said with words, but is how it is said and expressed. Nonverbal communication is different from person to person, and especially from one culture to another. Cultural backgrounds define their nonverbal communication as many forms of nonverbal communication, like signs and signals, as our learned behaviors. These are the different type of nonverbal communication: body language, eye contact, gestures, and even a simple handshake. The physical language are used more often than we think. According to Ayla Alder, who wrote the article "Let's Get Physical: Nonverbal Communication in Mexican Business," she suggests that 70% of interaction is mainly nonverbal. So let's travel down to Mexico and learn a little bit about these nonverbal communications that we would use in this business environment. In Mexican cultures, nonverbal exchanges can be misunderstood and misinterpreted as different suggestions give the silent language. For example, eye contact and eye movement. In the United States, we are driven to stare at somebody straight in the eye as a sign of respect and we're paying attention. However, in Mexico, looking someone straight in the eye, and I mean directly in the eye as a focal point, can also be a sign of aggressive or dominance. As for women, this is a stereotype of being flirtatious while doing this gesture. Women in the business world find it harder for looking for work. One study from the same article Ayla Alder wrote teaches women not to jump around from eye to eye or dance with their eyes. This kind of shows impression of being crazy or not paying attention, especially during a job interview. She expressed that as teaching these women how to present themselves in an interview, it is best to maybe look in the middle of their eyes or maybe at their ears so that they kind of show that they're paying attention. Some women are adapting to this behavior, others are suggesting that I hear with my ears and not with my eyes. It might take a little while for them to adapt to this. Distance and personal space is also big in Mexico. In the United States, we have a great distance between someone talking or in a conversation. This just shows a sign of respect or giving yourself personal space so that there's no discomfort in your conversation. However, in Mexico, closeness and someone who is talking to you while touching your shoulder or arm can also express as, I have confidence in you, I want to tell you something. And at times they will be offended or insulted if someone is withdrawn or moved away from someone being that close to you. Another gesture is a kiss on the cheek. Now, most women, among women, do greet each other with a hug and a kiss on the cheek, even between coworkers or someone you're friends with. However, with men, this act may be too feminine for them, so they won't be doing that. These are a few small gestures in Mexico of nonverbal communication. So let's see what other cultures we have that express this.
Alright guys, I'll be talking about Australian culture. This, in the US it means victory or peace, the peace sign. It could be like saying hi or like victory or I come in peace. Well, in Australia, this means I'm facing your enemy. So this is very vulgar because it's practically saying you're my enemy. And then thumbs up, it's like in the US it's saying good job. It's pretty much saying showing appreciation for somebody for what they did, like saying good job. But in Australia, it's like pretty much saying it's like the middle finger. It's pretty much similar to the middle finger in the U.S. Like in Australia, I would be flipping people off if I did this. They would get really offended by it. And then winking, in the U.S., it's sign of playfulness. Like someone I can say like, something like showing like affectionate, like something that you can really playful. But in Australia, it's like if you do it to a man or a woman, it's like it's saying it's too suggestive. So it could be a lead to invitation to in a relationship or even more. And then when in the U.S. we don't cover our mouth, we don't cover our mouths when we yawn. We just let it happen. We just cover our mouths when we're sneezing, and coughing. But on Australia, whenever they yawn, they always cover their mouths with a gesture of saying "excuse me," because it just shows kind of like basic manners. Almost every culture is always involved in shaking hands. Like in the U.S. we always shake hands, but in Australia, in the U.S. it doesn't matter who shakes hands first, but in Australia usually the woman shake hands first. But although they don't shake hands with other women, which is, I guess it shows like they just say hi, or I guess it's a sign of vulgar or too, yeah. Anyways, and then for their first name, they don't use the first name right away. They don't say like Leonardo. They don't say that when they first introduce. They just say Mr. Leonardo. And speaking of first names, whenever you're social statusly, the only time they use their first name, Australians use it because in the U.S. we use our first name for anything like casual or formally, but in Australia they only use first names when it's the same age group, same level, same educational level, same work level. And it's anything about the level. So that's what's different. I guess that's a sign of if they have someone higher up than you, they say Mr. because it's a sign of respect, a sign of, I guess you could say, politeness. I guess you could say. And then in the U.S., nicknames and insults can either be acceptance or it can be insulting to the people. In Australia, it means if you say it to another friend or mate, it's considered accepting and a sign of friendship. So let's say let's say Leonardo's friends saying call him by nickname, in Australia it's like, oh, you're my friend, and it's a sign of acceptance and shows like they're really good friends. And in the business side, they take punctuality seriously. Okay, I gotta start reading. They take it seriously. Like, I don't know if the U.S. like in the U.S. like I'm thinking it applies to the same rules U.S. like you show up early as signs of like you care, but in Australia they actually care if you show up early. It sounds like you really care about this job or interview, and having knowing people higher up in the business world, it really helps in Australian culture. It gives them like a better chance of finding a better job, better finding ways of paying, and they quit. And when it comes to business, they get down to business. Like they don't. I guess it's like another word of saying they cut to the chase. So they say they have a problem. They say cut to the chase. What are we gonna do about it? So and that's how Australians are. Like in the U.S., we just have a little process. Sometimes we can do that, but sometimes we just have to think about it and say, okay, what do we do here? But in Australia, they just say cut to the choice. They just say, you know what, we have a problem, now we're gonna fix it. We don't we just go. We just go.
Asian people are high context communicators. Asian cultures are typically high context cultures in which gesture, body language, eye contact, pitch, intonation, word stress, and the use of silence are as important as the actual words being spoken in conversation. Asians are typically polite in social encounters, whereas Americans, being very low context communicators, are comfortable with very direct questions and answers and often seem abrupt to people from high context cultures. In the Asian culture, just like every other culture, the nonverbal communication are as follows. The gestures in the Asian culture, they use their entire hand to point to something, where in American culture, we tend to use our index finger to point at something. Some Asian cultures greet by either handshaking or bowing. With eye contact, it is taught to be disrespectful or rude, and lack of eye contact does not mean that a person is not paying attention. In the Asian culture, women may especially avoid eye contact with men because it can be taken as a sign of sexual interest. The time orientation. Asians view time as a more fluid element with no control over them. With the physical postures are also quite of a difference between cultures. The most common example is the habit of many American executives to rest with their feet on their desk, which in Asia is considered highly offensive. The paralanguage, how we talk, also constitutes of what we communicate. For example, vocal tones, volume, rhythm, pitch, etc. Speak more than what words can express. Asian people control themselves from shouting, as they are taught not to from childhood. They are known as vocal qualifiers, vocal characterizations like crying, whining, yelling, etc. change the meaning of the message. In touch, while patting a child's head is considered to be a friendly or affectionate gesture in our culture, it is considered inappropriate by many Asians to touch someone on the head, which is believed to be a sacred part of the body. Handshakes are usually acceptable almost everywhere, even between strangers. However, kissing on the cheek, patting on the shoulder, embraces, or touching other bodily parts aren't for many people in Asia. In other parts of the world, such actions are interpreted as offense or even a violation of one's private space. With the facial expressions, Southeast Asians often smile or laugh in situations that Americans consider inappropriate. In American culture, smiles and laughter are generally limited to expressing happiness and humor. To Asians, a smile or a laugh may communicate many things: scorn, pleasure, indifference, embarrassment, pain, awkwardness, or disapproval.
Now we transition to two economic powerhouses. And how do they do this? Through business. And what happens with business? Business uses communication. Now we're going to see how Germany and the United States compare when they use communication. Now we start with time. Germany has shop closing laws, which means no work on Sundays. And they have a 48-hour average weekly basis on a 6-month period that they cannot go over. In comparison, the United States has the Fair Labor Standards Act, which prevents a 7-day work week, and there's exceptions for both laws, the shop closing laws and the Fair Labor Standards Act, which are executives, doctors, or any kind of professionals like accountants, nurses, etc. Now we look at both of them, and they have diversity. Within a business, diversity allows people to have different viewpoints, which enhances business activity. Now we go towards ethics. Ethically, both nations of Germany and the United States have been ranked very well among corruption in the public sector. Now, in a business meeting for both Germans and Americans, eye contact is very crucial to keep both parties interested. If you're not keeping eye contact with your predecessor or your business partner, he's going to seem, or they're going to think that you are not interested in making decisions regarding business. Handshakes have to be short and firm and not too long, but it's very optional with Americans. But Germans, you have to do this because it shows them that you are very interested in business. And regarding their meetings, they are more formal in Germany because they include Dr., Mr., Mrs., whereas Americans, they don't really use formal language. It depends on the situation, but mostly not. After the meeting comes the post-meeting, which is very important for Germans, because if you make a contract as an American over the phone, that means that's a binding contract. And to prove that, a German will send you a letter of intent in order to verify all the proceedings that occurred, which makes it a nullified contract. Whereas the United States uses a real paper with both signatures from both parties to confirm the meeting.
So in conclusion, nonverbal communication plays an important role in how we convey meaning and information to others, as well as how we interpret the actions of those around us. Culture has an array of values, traits, and complex systems in their own society. Adapt and mold into understand all types of culture that crosses our path. Building a solid foundation of verbal and nonverbal cues allows us to understand the use of time, space, and territory, and we interpret it to the receiver. Learn about different cultures, make fewer assumptions, find similarities, and it will then help you be successful in your business.